Hello ladies and gentlemen, yes, Zeke here again today for a quick support tutorial. And I'm going to start out by actually showing you this model right here and pointing out a couple of the smaller issues with it. It's not that bad. There's a lot of good work that's been done here, but a lot of these spikes are actually self-supporting, and you'll notice that the model itself is supporting these. So what bigger support could you ask for than the bottom of this arm right here, which is attached to the leg already? Resin is actually pretty good at bridging, it just can't hold much weight. So you could get some pull forces on these flatter spikes here, but on these ones that are pointing upwards, this is a tiny bit much. So let's go ahead and remove the supports from this, and I'll go over the very basics in this video in order to, well, basically in order to make sure that you have the foundations from the beginning to end. So the most important part of the entire process is generally orientation, but in all honesty, there's not that much you can do with this model. So let's go to layout here. I'm going to tilt it slightly this way so that the elbow spikes are pointing up. I'm actually going to tilt it slightly forwards so I can get the main supports for his face under the chin, and so that I can reach his teeth more easily. And also so that these elbow spikes are pointing a bit more upwards, so I don't have that problem with the bridging here. It's already been raised 5 millimeters, so make sure your island detection is on real. Make sure you are not printing at 100 microns, because that will actually not show you all the islands. So switch it to 20 microns and do a quick search here. So the most important thing to start by doing is to do the structural supports. After you place all the structural supports, which are your heavies and mediums, the file should print. You might lose some of the detail, the teeth might not print, the little bits and bobs hanging out might not print, but the model itself will print beginning to end. Sometimes for very thin things you have to support using multiple lights, but generally all the structural supports are going to be heavies. So start by orienting, follow it up by doing the structural supports. After the structural supports are done, then you can work on the details. It's exactly like building a house. You start with the foundation and then you move on to the detail work. So on feet I tend to go a bit nuts because I might as well, they're going to be glued to the ground. I can see here that this foot is not going to be entirely glued to the ground. The bottom here wants to actually be slightly over, so I'll just put one support there. But this foot looks like it will be entirely glued to the ground, so you might as well just pepper it with heavies. This is always about the density I use for heavies on feet. It's just what I find comes off easily and doesn't cause any problems when it comes to removing them. If you put too many supports on the feet, this ankle could very easily break when you remove the support. If you want to get my settings, please join the Make Print Not War Discord, and message me there, and I will give you all of my settings, because they are very custom compared to the normal ones. So here I have supported his ass, because you always have to support the taint, as I have learned. But right now I'm just supporting it straight up and down, which wouldn't be much of a problem because he prints mostly straight up and down. But I'm going to do some chandeliering here, which is supporting from multiple angles to give the model itself increased stability. Because the thing to remember is that you're not actually building a structure upwards, you are printing upside down, and you are hanging this model from the supports. And the other important thing to note is that these supports are flexible until they're post-cured. So you're not actually printing a model from a solid structure, but you're hanging it from flexible strings. They're not quite strings, but it's a good way of thinking about it. So if you hang it from multiple angles, then you will have more stability, and you won't have to put as much support on these smaller details like these spikes. So again, chandelier there, chandelier here. A good indicator for where you should be chandeliering is when the circle is quite wide, the white circle here, because that means you have a lot of area in one layer. Some people would support here, but this is perfectly supported by the model itself, so no need to do that. I've already broken my own rule and stopped doing the structural supports. So here I'm going to get a tiny bit complicated because I want to support his chin, but I want to do it in such a way that I don't really leave any marks and that I do it from behind. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use light supports here to start, and I'm going to attach them to these supports way back here. And this is just a string support. It would actually work. Well, it wouldn't hold all that weight, but it would work. The only issue with it is that it would become a string and you'd have to scrape it off with an X-Acto knife. So go into base tip and expand the base tip diameter, which you can only get it so thick. So if this is still too thin for you, you can hold Alt and then click here and then click on where the thing originates, and that will create this type of little binding support. And then you can actually hold Alt still and create braces that will help this thing exist. There we go. And not only is that a good way of supporting the support itself, but it's a very good way of creating a anchor point that is a bit more heavy with which to draw the rest of the supports. So now that I have that in order, I can select this to get its attributes, Alt-Tab, and then start supporting from there. So I have this nice little thing. But I'm going to have to chandelier this, so I'm going to have a couple of supports on these front teeth. You see how this area is nice and wide here? Like lots of white. That's a good place to add a support as well. And I'm going to put one right here. And that should be enough to hold that face. If you want to see how much weight these supports are holding, remember you're hanging this. So would this hang? It keeps hanging, it keeps hanging. It's definitely enough supports to hold the weight, but you just have to wonder where the weight is swinging to. So it's going straight up to there, then it evens out, it goes in both directions at the same time, so it's still just a straight up force, and then it connects to the model. So you're perfectly safe here. I wouldn't send this out to be test printed or printed without test printing it myself, but I'm confident that it would print. I'm actually going to change up this angle in order to get a better disconnection on it, and I'm going to make it a medium support by, yeah, well, almost a heavy support there. So one heavy support going straight up and down, get that angle right so that it snaps off nicely. Make it a bit less than a heavy, maybe a 3/5. There we go. Give it a tiny bit of weight to be going on with. And then I'm going to start working on the dental here. The dental isn't going to require much weight. I actually don't need to put a support there. That was a fake island, but I figured it wouldn't hurt anything, and also it would give me a very good place to do the dental work from. So just Alt Control and then create a mini support. Make sure that the mini support isn't obscuring too much of the detail. So get it like right on the edge there, and then make it smaller so that you only have the very tip. Create one of those, select this, and then start doing this right here. Some of the larger teeth I might also try to get a support in from behind in order to make sure that all the weight is held, but for now you just want to support the very tip of the island, and there we go. And now let's make sure the weight is held, and to do that I'm going to do the same thing again, except I'm going to connect it slightly higher up here and make sure the support is connecting in the back. Dental work can be rather tough because it's tricky to get all the teeth in such a way that they will all be supported. I'm just holding Alt-Shift here to create a support from the same location. Those small teeth won't need any extra support. This one probably will. Remember that I told you that these things will become very annoying strings now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of them by by control clicking, because apparently I should have done this earlier, but shift clicking? Yes, shift clicking. Shift click didn't work originally, so I thought I was wrong and I needed to control click. So select all of them and expand the base tip so that they snap off nicely. Make sure that you don't have any like very weird areas going on where the supports will fuse and not connect properly. And this tooth will also require one little back support here, so it won't require it, but it'll be nice to have. So let's create one of those. You can keep holding Alt Control while you adjust your camera. That's what I'm doing right now. Make sure that creating this type of support hasn't created an island on its own. Shrink that a bit, and there we go. And the dental work is done. Can't help but notice there's some islands on the chest here, but those islands could very easily be taken care of from this exact same angle to save some support material. I'm going to do this one from higher up because I can. Make sure you haven't created an island by creating that, and no, I haven't. So then I can create more supports from the same angle, and we are all good to go. These are not quite real islands, but it is a large bridge, so you might as well put a couple of light supports on there. I'm done with the structural. I finished with the structural quite a while ago, you might notice. There is still a bit more structural to do, but it's all structural using lights, which is why I'm doing like dental work, the toes, that kind of thing. And just, these toes are a bit long. I want to see where they connect. Okay, they're not that long, so this will be perfectly fine. This white line is your best friend when it comes to supporting. Always be watching it and seeing where things connect and how much weight things are holding. Again, see, like this, you might think you need a heavier support there, but it connects after about 3 layers, maybe 5 layers, so just put a single light support there. Hands also tend to be very tough. I have a specific style for doing them. It's quite a bit like the teeth, where I just do a light support on each of the fingertips, making sure the angle is good, and by the angle is good, I mean that it impacts as close to 90 degrees as possible. That will create a cleaner break when you actually have to de-support it. So I'm just doing all these fingertips first. This is not enough weight to support the model, but it is how you want to start by doing things in order to not ruin the shape of the fingertips. These hands are actually rather complicated, I have to admit. So normally I would try to put more supports on the back of the fingers, but it's not really possible in this case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build up using lights a bit here. This hand is, like, this model is actually very clever. This hand is connected to this hand, so as long as this hand prints, which I can throw a medium there to make sure that it prints, and Alt-V to straighten the support. Yeah. Then this hand will print because it prints from the same model. So they've done some intersecting hands on purpose, which is actually preventing me from having to use tons of medium supports. But either way, I'm going to support these fingers from the back as well. I'm going to be distracted by a cat who really wants to cuddle, and then because I can, it's the inside of a hand and nobody will ever see it, I'm going to throw a couple of mediums down here. And in this one, I'm going to need a couple more lights building up. Kind of a complicated hand situation. If you hit Shift V, you'll actually toggle your transparency between the previous and the current version. So that's over here. It will just toggle between the last one you had selected and the previous one. So Shift V to go back and forth in terms of that. Very useful little shortcut, especially for when things get a bit crowded because you've screwed up. And I have slightly screwed up here by blocking my lines of sight. You want to make sure you're not doing that. My cat thinks I'm talking to her, which is why she's being so lovey right now. This is not really a real island, but it is a pretty good place to put a support anyways. You see that big chunk of white there? That's a large overhang area. Okay, now just the remaining spikes, and we should be good to go. So these are a bit complicated because they are quite long. It would be better if they were pointing upwards, but just keep in mind you're hanging it. So how long will this hang before it starts bending these supports? Probably about to right here. And then all 3 of these should easily take it the rest of the way. Okay, let's get my visibility back so I can actually see the supports and make sure I'm not clipping anything or doing any, or tying the model in, which can happen sometimes. So this one also 3 supports. Yeah, large flat surfaces are your main enemy, especially if they have to hold weight, because resin is quite good at bridging, but it's not very good at holding weight with the bridges. So if this is holding a bit of weight, you can see, let's actually chandelier this a bit earlier to give it a bit of extra support. And then that will build up pretty nicely. This one is actually only going to require a single support, maybe a second one on this lovely large bridge right here. It thinks it's too close to the model, but the program is full of shit. Just check when that happens, and usually you'll be fine. And then just 2 supports right there. Everything else is building upwards, 3 islands remaining, so let's just search them out. Oh, forgot to do the toes. There we go. I was wondering what I had missed. Don't usually miss a ton. And then let's get some supports from the back here. Again, chandeliering is what I call it because I can't think of a better word for it. And in order for all of these supports to break off in chunks, well, first of all, I always use this raft because it reduces the suction on the bottom layer and it's very nice. It saves resin. Then I always go to this little bar right here, manual supports, and then I hit bracings. It just creates enough bracings and makes it really nice so that all the supports come off in chunks. And remember earlier I was saying don't tie in the model? Here I have tied in the model, and I don't entirely... Oh, that was a bracing, so it did that automatically. You don't want that because then you actually have to, like, you have to rip that apart or clip it in order to get the model out, or do some really awkward maneuvering. So just kind of make sure none of that is going on anywhere, because as you can see, the program will do it itself. Yeah, and I'm done. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, please do like, comment, subscribe. I do have a Patreon if you want to support me there. It currently says I do support work, but if you don't get a hold of me personally, then I won't be doing it. It's just a way of supporting me. So that'll be in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye. The stop recording button didn't work.